Okay, we're live. All right, yay, we're live. All right, hello everyone. I'm Dr. Labinton. I help patients live long and well because I believe the quality of life is just as important as the quantity of life. And today we're having a Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Instagram Live, depending on when you're watching this, talking about how to reduce the risk of having dementia. Um, Fun fact, well, it's not a fun fact, but I just want to encourage everyone watching to know that you do have a say in your risk of having dementia. So I don't want you to think that this is something you're doomed to getting, or this is something that because there's a family history, you have to accept that fate. There are things that you have, control over, and we're going to have conversations in line with that with the one and the only Dr. Rashmi Schramm. Hi, Doc. How are you?
I am so good. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Another month. We're in the second quarter of 2024. I'm still amazed that the year has gone by this fast.
It is zipping by.
Yes. Now, for those who are wondering, Dr. Rashmi is a repeat guest. This is not the first time she's been on here, so I'm very grateful to have her on for the second time here. And we're talking about reducing the risk of having dementia. Now, if you're watching live, please hashtag live. If you're watching replay, hashtag replay. If you know people, friends, who have had this concern, you can share this video with them and have them join live or tag them in the comment section so they can ask questions live. We are live and we're here to have these conversations to help you. Okay. All right. That being said, Doc, do you mind introducing yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
Absolutely. So my name is Rashmi Schramm. I am a board certified family physician. I'm also a certified Ayurveda and meditation and mindfulness coach. I also teach yoga therapy, which is trauma informed. And so I have a coaching program where I use mindfulness, meditation, and I intermix those so we can get some pretty transformative results for the folks that I tend to work with. And I do group work and I do one-on-one work as well.
You do all the things. Love that you're family medicine, of course. But Doc, why do you do what you do? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I've always been attracted to this mind body healing type of thing. And I feel like it kind of got snuffed out during medical training, whether it was medical school or residency. We were sort of really discouraged from feeling our feelings or even talking about emotional health and well being. And so I moved kind of far away from it. And I've been practicing family medicine since literally the year 2000. So it's been a very, very long time. And it's a long term love affair for me. So for me, it's all about just being proactive. And as I was practicing medicine as an attending, I had young kids and my husband was working a lot. And I found that my stress level just kept going up and up and up. And as I just mentioned, I wasn't really taught any tools for stress reduction and or stress management in any way. And so I just kept ignoring it. And it sort of went into, I was having a lot of irritability, and then I started having a lot of migraine headaches. And then I started having all kinds of inflammatory issues within the mind-body system. And I said, okay, something has got to give. And so I started to look at lifestyle and what was I doing in my lifestyle? How could I help myself? And this whole journey really truly is one of just how can I heal myself so that I can help others better. And along in that journey, I was brought up in India, and mindfulness, meditation, yoga, all of that was very normal for us in the family. And so I was always been attracted to that. And so I kind of came back to meditation is how I like to say. And so I've over the years been, practicing meditation. And then about 12 years ago, I started a teacher training program, mostly because there was no social media. I didn't have anyone local who I knew who was practicing meditation. I really did that as a way to actually just find accountability in a group and to get the deep teachings. And so since then, that was like the first door that opened. And since then, I've, gone after certification because we know that's very addictive. But really all of that to say, the reason that I do what I do is because I knew that if I, as a physician, didn't have any of the tools, that we certainly don't have the tools as a community and as a society. And so as I started to find some of these answers for myself, I really tried to simplify it so that I can deliver it and serve and earn in a way that makes sense for me.
I like that. Serve and earn. And you also learned your from your personal experiences too that started you on this journey, and now you use your experiences to empower others. I like it. I like it. Um, so my next question to you is: we're talking dementia. So what is dementia, and why should we care, or why should we address it?
Yeah, dementia is kind of a broad term, as you know, Doc. So it relates to a few different kinds of dementia. Alzheimer's is the thing that comes to our minds first when we say dementia, and that's because about 60 to 80% of dementia cases are Alzheimer's disease. But we also have different kinds of dementia: Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal dementia, et cetera, et cetera. But they are kind of in this category. Dementia in and of itself, it tends to do with memory, right? And memory loss. It has to do with being confused as to where we are, and also, again, losing the capacity to connect with others because we kind of can't remember the time and space and the people that we're with. And so really, in a broad term, dementia, when we talk about it, I think we're talking about this sense of memory loss and this sense of like disconnectedness from the outside world.
Mm.
Really scary.
I agree. I agree. Now we're having this conversation not to scare people.
No.
We're having this conversation because we want to empower our viewers, right?
Exactly.
And so let's talk about primary risk factors. Of course, there are different types of dementia, and these are conversations. Of course, the risk factors that are determined or depend on the type, right? But generally speaking, what are some of the primary risk factors, or things that you've seen or you know to be linked to dementia?
Yeah, I think this is so powerful, this particular conversation, because like you said at the top of this live, none of us are doomed, regardless of what your, genetic tests may say or your family history might say. The most important factors are how we're living our lives, or lifestyle changes and lifestyle factors, as you know. And so, yes, sure, I said the word scary, but I mean it in a way of like really empowering ourselves, because we really can do so much about this way of being in our lives, right? So it has to do, if you think about it, if you just take, a step away and you look at what may cause dementia, may also cause cardiovascular disease, may also
Right.
cause diabetes, right? Like they are all connected to each other. And so then how do we get healthier? The common denominator is also very, very simple, right? Which is nutrition. So mostly plants, mostly whole foods, good fats in our diet. Our brain loves good fats. And so those can be things like fatty nuts, avocados, olive oil, those types of things, and whole grains, whole foods, right? And so really the big things to avoid are very processed foods, processed meats, those things. It's the same things that we say for cardiovascular disease and diabetes, right? So there's a trend here. And so that's nutrition. And then there's exercise, same thing that we say for cardiovascular disease, right? Like JAMA studies show that it's not even that hard, right? Go for a walk every single day. And that will reduce our risk for dementia very significantly. So those are two big ones that we can do right away if we're not doing those, right? The third one is sleep. It's a really, really big deal. Sleep, we cannot negotiate, right? So we know that 7 to 8 hours, usually 8 hours of restorative, rejuvenative sleep is non-negotiable for any of us. And so however it is, if we're suffering from, however ways of not being able to get that sleep, we need to prioritize that sleep. In fact, just very recently, just this week, I had this conversation about how important sleep is, because I think we really forget that sometimes. And, in this age of 24-hour internet, 24-hour everything, like, we're just one ping away, we can start to lose the boundaries between our work, between all of that. And so if we're finding ourselves up till 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever, 1 o'clock in the morning, online or working, we are really sacrificing our sleep. And when we sacrifice our sleep, our risk for dementia goes very, very high. So those are 3 big ones, right? The fourth one is stress reduction. So we know that chronic daily stress literally shrinks the size of the brain. And, the hippocampus at the very center of the brain that's really responsible for memory we actually see it shrinking in people who suffer from chronic daily stress. And so this is where meditation and mindfulness, which I really want to start to get into, can be a huge,
So
huge.
because you're dropping a lot of gems. Like this is good. This is good. But Doc, I like how you said risk reduction. We're emphasizing it. The same reason why we encourage patients to get vaccines, and we say, here's blood pressure medicine, and this is why we're having these conversations. As we add all these things together, we reduce the risk of someone developing dementia. You now mentioned stress reduction. I have some people who I know, if I were a listener, like maybe a few years ago, I'd have tuned out. Oh, what does she mean, stress reduction? Life is stress. Work is stress. It's supposed to be stressful. So can we pause? Because you mentioned that chronic stress shrinks the size of the brain, and I don't want my brain to have shrinkage. So can we talk about practical tips? I'm at work. It's stressful. It's work. I mean, I don't know what to say, but how can we, knowing this, reduce stress consciously, even in the hustle and bustle of life, Doc?
Yes, this is such a good question. So it doesn't mean that we're going to go run up on a mountaintop and sit in cross-legged position and and meditate all day, right? Honestly, that's kind of how I used to think of it too. I used to think, well, I don't have the luxury of like being like, oh, I'm going to work on my stress reduction, but it's actually not a luxury; it's a necessity, right? So what do I mean by stress reduction? Is stress, if we want to define it, is the perception of a threat. Right. So stress can be like I'm sitting in traffic and I know I'm going to be 15 minutes late for work and I'm going to be like really mad at myself about that. Right. That is stress. And yet we can do nothing about this in this moment. And the stress can continue to build up and build up and build up and build up. That is stress. It's the perception of a threat, physical or emotional or mental. Stress also at work. Imagine, right? So you've got how many patients in the waiting room? You've got how many patients waiting for you in rooms already? You're, 45 minutes behind already, and you're exhausted and you're hungry. That is stress, right? So you're not manufacturing any of those things. There is a threat to you. People are going to be mad at you.
True.
This is very real. And you are going to be late for work, like, in that other scenario. So it isn't that we're saying pretend everything is okay, but we're saying, is there a different way to perhaps look at it in a kinder, gentler, softer way of I am doing my best, and this is the best that I can do in this very moment. I'm going to get through the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 11 minutes, however, whatever it is that we need to say to ourselves. And, don't forget simple things like just bringing our attention to the breath can kind of shake us out of this overwhelm. Because what happens when we're feeling really, really, really stressed is actually we're not even functioning at our highest selves, because then the prefrontal cortex, where all the creativity and all this focus stays, it goes offline because it's like, oh my gosh, we're in danger. Like this is the saber-tooth tiger coming for us. And so then we're functioning kind of in these older reptilian brain, right? Within the midbrain. And so it actually, when we work on stress reduction, isn't just to feel calm or look calm. Because actually I think looking calm can be very dangerous because it's this idea of pretending everything is okay. But it's this idea of how can I connect with my breath? How can I practice some self-compassion? And these are all ways in which we can start to develop as we move through all of the stressful events in our lives. So we're not taking away the stressful events. In fact, I don't know that it's ever possible to take them away, but perhaps, if there is space and time, you can readjust it. Maybe you're going to allow 25-minute patient appointments rather than 15, but you don't have that option right then and there when you've got, 12 patients waiting for you before lunch. So I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense for you?
Yes, it does. And I'm pausing on this because I this conversation comes up a lot. But Doc, for instance, at work, you're working, you're like this, you're hardly breathing, you're taking shallow breaths, you're tense, your back is, I'm like, you can relax and still work. Or people who are like, my inboxes keep going up, so they feel the pressure. Like in conversation with my clients, they're like, well, the inbox, I'm like, it's never going to be zero. Otherwise, you don't have a job. So it's job security. So try to relax and just what's next? And then there's the example of car rage, road rage. One of the things that helped me, and I'm glad I caught on to this a lot earlier, is when people cut me off, I'm like, if I look ahead, there's a light, they're still going to stop. We're all going and then I drive right next to them and I'm like, so I'm not going to lose sleep or raise my blood pressure over that. So these are simple things because the stress you mentioned here, perception of a threat, your body literally feels like a tiger is about to chew your head off. And that's not good for the brain. And so it's important that we do these things to de-stress, even under pressure.
It actually, exactly when we're under pressure, that's when it's actually very important. And it can happen in the matter of 3 seconds, right? It can happen. And so what I help people do is I help them train in certain breathwork practices to where they can literally go from 110 miles an hour to zip right back to completely grounded,
Mm.
because they have then formed this beautiful neural pathway for when I take these 2 breaths in this particular way, calm enters me from the inside out rather than me pretending to be calm and having a huge meltdown inside, which we are all good at, by the way. Like, it's not like, we're all good actors in that way. Oh no, I'm fine. Great. How are you? That kind of thing. And so breath work can be really important. These are all mindfulness techniques, right? And so when we're able to even have a little bit of window, like you said, which is, what you were saying is you changed your perception of like the road rage person, and it shifted your capacity to stay in that moment and to not get too razzled before you got to work or before you got to pick the kids up or whatever. And it's the same thing. I started to notice that for myself too. And it took me a couple or 3 breaths to get to like, there's the light. So this was a while ago. My oldest is 19. So when she first started driving, you just start to, your kids are a little younger, but then you start to go, oh my goodness, they're watching me drive. So when she was 15, I'm like, okay, let me see how do I drive, became this conscious thing. And one of the things that I started to just adapt was, and there's so much road rage. Oh my goodness. Was my instinct was to like scream, right? And so like what I scream, and I still do it now, which is just somebody cuts me off and I'm like, may all your dreams come true.
I love it.
And then I'm like, okay, it snaps me out of my crazy. Like, I really mean
that.
it. I just bless this person. I hope they have a better day. I really hope your dreams come true. I'm like screaming at them.
I love that.
And then I go on about my day, and it makes me laugh a little bit because how silly it is. And then I'm like, yeah, come on. Life is not that serious. Yes, I could road rage back at them. We could just keep on with this cycle and just keep escalating everything. But ultimately, there must be something going on in this person's life to where they felt the need to do this to me, to my car.
So essentially, Doc, you're saying that everyone needs to have a mental fart. You got to let off some steam. You gotta that's the way I explain. Like, you gotta let it out. Yeah, sorry, that's the best analogy to come up with right now. But you got to blow off steam because it affects how your brain functions. All right, Doc, we talked about sleep. Can we harp on that a little bit more? So for someone who's watching who's like, well, that's the time, like I need to give up some of my sleep time to do things that are important, spend quality time, to reset, to de-stress, to do some of the things you're talking to me about. Why should I prioritize sleep?
Yeah, this is such a good question because this used to be me too, and there's so many studies that show, particularly, working parents, because like there's no free time for you at all during, you wake up, you start doing something with the kids, you get them off to school, you go to work, and you have no free time at work. And then, you get home, shift 2 starts, and you're like, woo, and you get them off to bed, and it might be 9:30, maybe even 10 if you're getting older kids. And then you're just like, now it's me time. I'm going to spend 2 hours just doing whatever I want to do. I'm going to binge on Netflix. And all of it, in theory sounds good because it feels like, oh, this is me time, or this is just what I have to do. But what we really want to look at again is, what is the cost, right? Everything is costing us something. And if you look at what's supposed to be happening, starting at around 10:30 at night, all the way until 6 in the morning, is we are supposed to be resetting and literally like vacuuming out what's left over in the brain, right? Like everything that we take in, just like everything that we eat, has to be metabolized. Otherwise, it's just gonna stay. And we know in the brain, like in the body, we have the lymphatic system, but in the brain, we have something called the glymphatic system, right? So this is from the glia, and there's a ton of waste products that every single day, as we're taking in information, we have to get rid of it. And the brain, it might look like we're not doing anything when we're sleeping, but there is a huge amount of brain activity that's happening thing. It's literally a clearing out so that we can wake up refreshed, ready to learn, ready to work, ready to, just kind of hit the day with kind of this welcoming way. And that is the really big risk. That's why you can imagine if we're not able to clean out the brain, and that's a simple way of thinking about it, and that happens night after night after night. And by the way, we know there are different cycles, and we have to cycle through certain parts of these every single night until we hit 7 or 8 hours. And if we don't go through all of those cycles, like if we just wake up at 2 in the morning and we're like, you know what, forget it, I'm going to go watch Netflix, you might feel like, hey, that's not such a big deal, but we're really disrupting that sleep pattern. And we're not going to be able to have that restoration and imagine doing that day after day after day, which is what I used to do for sure before I understood the importance of sleep. It is very gradually, but very real increases in our risk for developing dementia. And that can happen pretty rapidly if we're not careful. So that's why really sleep is such a key factor. And getting restorative sleep is such a key factor in how we can reduce our risk for getting dementia.
Thank you. Thank you for stressing that. Now let's talk about activities. You talked about, information overload and being on the phone, but there are games on the phone that are, suggested to improve the risk of staying mentally intact. So word puzzles. Are there any that you recommend or discourage, that help keep, the mental, minimize the risk of dementia?
Yeah, I love that question, because what you're talking about is this way of kind of improving our cognitive function, right? And so these, whether it's Sudoku or any other game, they're just introducing us to new neural networks, right? So it's perhaps learning a new language. I think that's, we know that studies show that that's a huge thing. And like right now, I love Duolingo. I've been using Duolingo forever, not necessarily to reduce my risk of dementia, although that'd be great if it did that, but also just as a way to learn a language and invoke different parts of the brain. And so for most of us are spending too much time on electronics. So if there is an option of doing Sudoku on a paper, that's great. If there's an option of going somewhere to learn something like improv just for fun, because you have a little bit of time, you're developing new neural networks. So all these different ways of being, right? One of the best things that we can do is learn how to play like a sport, or even go bowling with friends, or, like pickleball, for example. I mean, it's like growing, it's exploding.
Yes.
And it is one of the best ways that we can prevent dementia and prevent heart disease and prevent one of the other big risk factors we haven't talked about yet which is social isolation or loneliness, which is a huge problem. It's an actual epidemic here in the United States and in so many other countries as well. So you can kind of solve a lot of things by just getting out and playing. And that will also develop those new neural networks that we just talked about.
All right, you're a doc. I always say this, you got to learn something new. That signals something, parts of your brain to start kind of wake up. Studies show that most people don't use most of their brains by the time that they're dead, sadly. So
sadly, yes. Or an instrument, for example, a musical instrument. That's always a really great way to kind of re-aliven a lot of these different areas. Yes.
All right, awesome. Now let's talk about other things, other risk factors that help minimize. You alluded to one a few seconds ago about social isolation, so preventing that. Let's talk about that some.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So social isolation means this lack or feeling of lack of connection, right? So it can be that we might live with people, maybe we even live in a very big city, but we know that sometimes when we live alone or when we live with people that we're not maybe in like a healthy relationship with, we can start to become more and more socially isolated. And certainly COVID was a huge example for that. It really shook us and kind of shifted the way that we move and live and communicate with each other. And so we oftentimes think that, texting with someone is connecting, but we know from studies that there's really no substitute for either face-to-face like this, it can be electronic. It has to be live. A phone call is better than a text, which, we've kind of moving away from that too. Though all of those things can reduce our social isolation. So it isn't that we have to live with a big family, even though that is how our structures, in generations before us really were. Like I grew up in a very big extended family. So it was lots and lots of, aunts and uncles and cousins and all kinds of people you never knew how many people were going to be, sleeping at the house or how many people would be there for dinner. And that was just like normal. But, now it's like, I have to plan 6 months in advance if I want to invite someone.
Right.
So it's not that it's bad, but we've just changed our customs and we have to change the way that we behave as well. And so I think one of the bigger risk factors, and this isn't just me saying this, science also shows this, is actually social media, because social media can sometimes actually increase our sense of social isolation. And so the more time we spend on social media, the less time we're spending with people in real life. And so that could be a real life, kind of actionable step, is just to maybe put some boundaries around it. Doesn't mean, it's not all or nothing, because we are very connected. Look, we're on social media right now, and we're delivering life information. We're delivering really important information. That's different, right? And so then we can, when we're doom scrolling, perhaps that's a boundary that we can put on ourselves. And so these are just simple ways that we can go about looking at social isolation.
Yes. Wow. So many tips you shared today. I know this has been very, very impactful for those of you who are watching. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always drop in the chat and I'll try to ask Dr. Rashmi before she leaves. But this has been very, very informative. We've learned about the importance of exercise, of eating well, of managing stress, of making sure we're sleeping well, of learning something new, of avoiding social isolation intentionally.
And if I may, there's some really cool research, Dr. Tolu, that shows that it's actually these tiny little interactions during our day that can really negate some of this feeling of isolation. So it can be literally making small talk with someone in the elevator. It can be just connecting for a minute with someone that maybe you're buying your coffee with. Like all of those really, these mini interactions that we have, or micro interactions that we have, actually continuously boost our moods. And so go have those, kind of make it a point to talk to like the person that's delivering your mail or whatever it is. Like I usually, if I'm around when the UPS person comes, I'm usually like, hey, thank you so much. And, just kind of, because it's good for them too, because a lot of times they're not really interacting with anyone. And so just these baby steps that we can take can really shift so much of our physiology.
Very important. So you heard it, Doc. It doesn't have to be a deep connection. Even superficial ones add value. All right. So be encouraged. Powerful. So we're wrapping up. It's almost time. This has been very good. It went by really fast. I didn't even get to my questions, but that's okay. I have someone who's watching. It's like, well, I'm an introvert. I don't think social interactions reduce risk for me. Any thoughts on that, Doc?
I think it's dose dependent, right? And so it's dose dependent, right? So like I'm an extrovert, and I literally am like, I have to be around people. And I learned that about myself. And so it's dependent for me. Like I could be in a huge party. I could be in huge conferences. I could talk to 1 million people a day. I'm exaggerating. And I love it. Then that's because I am naturally an extrovert. Whereas like my husband is naturally an introvert, and he gets all of his energy from sort of like some amount of solitude. So the difference really that we're talking about in this case, Dr. Tolu, is there is a fine line between solitude, which is very healing and nourishing, to loneliness, which is very dangerous. And only that person knows. So yeah, I mean, if that person isn't feeling lonely, they're fine.
Only that person knows. I like that.
Yeah, it's not like a metric. It's not like a lab we can take and be like, yes, you're lonely.
True. Wow, that's profound. Thank you for sharing. Oh, I have a question here. Very good question, Mercy. Thank you for posting. Are these things we talked about, are they proven to reverse dementia once it sets in? Now, of course, we said there are different types of dementia, or only slow the progression. And the question is, are these things proven?
Oof. What we know is we're talking about preventing dementia, right? So this is really about reducing our risk equals prevention. Here's what we know for sure. And I think it's Mercy that you said.
Yes.
By the time any one of us has the very first symptom of dementia, these things started probably 20, maybe 30 years ago. And so imagine trying to reverse back 30 years. Now, having said that, if it is a certain type of dementia, we can, there are certain types of dementias where we're finding it has to do with B12 deficiency, for example.
Right.
That, yes, of course we can fix, right? There are certain types of, tick-borne illnesses that can cause dementia-like symptoms that we can also reverse when we treat those. So they're very, very, few cases, but the real power for us is in reducing the risk to begin with. And so really, it's like saying, after we have our first heart attack, can I prove to you that I won't have my second one by running on the treadmill? That's not really a study that can really, because it's such a multifactorial situation that we're talking about. It's not, like one thing that's causing this one symptom. It's a conglomeration of symptoms that started over the course of decades and decades and decades ago. That's a really good question, though.
Yes, it is. Very, very, very. And so that's why root cause analysis was very important to know what type of dementia it is. I still say even with the mild and minor stages, it doesn't hurt to do these things too. Encourage.
100%.
Yes. We've seen them kind of slow the progression. And I'm hopeful that science will catch up soon.
I think so.
Yeah. But this is good. This is good, Doc. Thank you so much. Very, very powerful. Any last words of encouragement? Oh my goodness, it's 7:01.
Keep at it. Don't give up. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect at it, but the more time we spend, the more effort we spend in looking at how we can, by the way, exercise, sleep, stress reduction, social interaction, they actually help us feel really good too. So they have like this really great side effect of giving us more energy. And so there's really very little that we have to lose by eating a healthy diet and exercising and connecting with others. So I would say, please give it a shot.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Doc. I have people watching who's like, I like this doctor. I want to follow her content, follow her on the social media. We'll do it reasonably. So where can people find you?
I have a YouTube channel with all kinds of free resources for people, and you can just go to YouTube and type in my name and it should come up. So I am always trying to upload new meditations into that are all evidence-based, so you can reduce your risk, and you can give all those a try. I'm on Instagram as just Rashmi Schramm. I'm on Facebook with the same one. I'm on LinkedIn. And so let's connect if any of this, helps you. And if you're interested in really simple ways to reduce your stress, check out the YouTube, channel, because I've got breath work in there. I have meditations, and it's all free. It's all there.
And you have a podcast. You didn't mention.
And I have a podcast. Oh, thank you. And I have meditations on my podcast. My podcast is called Inner Peace and Power. And just today we hit 1,000 downloads. It's just a couple of months old and it's growing. And we talk all things stress reduction, all things inner peace, not just outer peace, but peace that comes from within, as a way for us to move through life with more skill. And it is really fun. I think y'all will like it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. This was very, very, very informative. I appreciate you, Doc.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tolu.
All right. Awesome. Thank you all for watching. Those of you who watch live, giving you shout outs, fist bumps, all the good stuff. I appreciate you, Erlene. Ms. Horridge, thank you for stopping by. Dr. Jarita, Norma, Erlene, all of you. I appreciate you all for joining us. Please, as always, sharing is caring. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you get notified when we go live. And as always, if you or anyone you know is looking for an awesome, a thorough and compassionate family physician in the Dallas, Texas, Mansfield area who will help you live long and well, I am she. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks again, Doc. This was good.
Thank you.